All right, that'll be great. I'll go ahead. I just started a recording for us. And hi, Melody. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are y'all?
Doing great. If both of y'all could tell me what your role is, that would be great. I don't believe we've ever actually met in person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, you go ahead, Mr. Butler.
No, please go right ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm one of the two learning specialists.
Okay. All right.
Yes, and I am the senior officer of secondary schools, so I work alongside Mrs. Morrell in serving and supporting all of our middle schools and high schools.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, now I am going to share a PowerPoint, and it is working this time, Mr. Butler.
Awesome, and I showed up right on time.
Uh-huh. So, all right, there's Sharonda. Sharonda, my PowerPoint's working this time. Okay. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start with today. I'm going to present a little summary for you of the report that we developed as a result of our GSAPS visit. And again, this is just a summary. And I will send you a much more detailed report later today that you can look at and dissect. And then if you have any questions on that, you can send them to me or anybody that was on the team. Okay. This report describes observations and recommendations that the team had on the day of the visit. The focus of this review is to support current school improvement efforts that is going on at Myers and to identify some specific structures and maybe give some recommended target actions for some of the efforts that they are already doing. The review process is not by any means an evaluation of the school, so please don't take it that way. It really just identifies some areas of focus to guide the school in positively impacting student outcomes. All right, there are the 5 systems that we rate while we are there that support the whole child. The components of a GSAPS visit are online surveys, classroom observations, the interviews typically done the day of the visit, a review of school data that the school submitted previously, and then on that day, we take all of that and kind of triangulate it and score the efforts on a rubric, and then develop some next steps. And then we have this summary presentation, and again, a much more detailed report that I'll send you later today. The team is usually composed of these individuals. However, I was lucky enough to have a math support person from the DOE. I had, I believe that same day, the EL support person, Noelle Wilkinson, was there. And we also had 2 people from the special ed department from the DOE. And the South program manager. And it was a great visiting team. We enjoyed our visit at the school very much that day. Our overall impressions the day of the visit: building was clean and well kept. Everybody was super accommodating and open to support and sharing with the team. The data is extremely accessible and pervasive throughout the school. And the math teachers are pervasively utilizing the DOE's math resources. So we thought that was a good thing. We did classroom observations the day we were there, and we rate those on a scale from 1 to 4. 1 is the practice was not observed, all the way up to the practice could be used as an exemplar for other teachers. And I just want to remind everybody that 1 is sometimes it's not necessarily negative. It's just that we didn't see it during the time we were in there. We just go in and it's just a little snapshot of what goes on in the classroom, 15, 20 minutes. And sometimes that's just not enough time to see everything on our observation instrument. Observation highlights for the day were that curriculum documents were aligned with your resources. Your rules, schedules, and procedures maximize student learning. Students maximize class time, and students function in a positive environment. Areas for possible growth would be centered around communicating learning targets and success criteria, student engagement, rigor that requires higher order thinking, and differentiation and personalized learning activities during Tier 1. The survey highlights for your school: students overall pervasively say that the school wants them to learn and has high standards for them, and that they knew that their family could see their grades online or have come to parent conferences, that the communication, the two-way communication was in place with their families. The parents felt like the staff ensures that their children succeed and that they feel welcome at school. That's very positive. The faculty say that teachers monitor student progress and the mastery required of the standards, and that they use documented processes to plan collaboratively. On our ratings of the structure, it's a scale very similar to the one for our observations. It goes from exemplary down to not evident. And sometimes, again, not evident is not necessarily negative. It's just that perhaps we didn't see evidence that day that we were there, or in the data that the school provided beforehand. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is not going on. Our visit is a snapshot of what goes on in the school. Just want to remind you of the purpose of our visit. It is to support the current improvement efforts that are taking place to reduce the variability in planning, teaching, and learning. It's to validate that the right work has been initiated by the school. And it is to recommend a few target actions to focus the efforts that are currently taking place. We will start with the system of coherent instruction. There are 4 structures under that we will look at. It is planning, classroom instruction, monitoring student progress, and that's mostly during the Tier 1 instruction, and then refining the instructional system. You can see there is the operational definition for planning. And I went and looked to see when the last time was that you had a GSAPS. It was during 1819, so it was before the pandemic. And they rated the school as emerging on this. We also rated the school as emerging on planning, but we do want to acknowledge that the lesson planning template is very clear. However, there's a little bit of a disconnect there with what goes on during the planning and the clear template that they have and what takes place in the classroom. And that's according to our observations. It was evident in the interviews, though, that you do have sufficient time set aside in your schedule for planning and data teams. In delivering quality instruction, you can see the operational definition there. In that previous GSAPS, it was rated as emerging, and in this visit, we also rated it as emerging. Some particular comments that I pulled out for you to be able to see. Math observations show that attempts are being made to combine the former and current instructional frameworks, and our math person who was there specified that the framework should be completely shifted to the new DOE framework for math. in content appropriate courses, the implementation of I do, we do, you do, which is part of your planning template. It was not evident in many of the observations. There was an abundance of I do and teacher instruction from classroom to classroom. And that's what provided the impetus for rating it as emerging. CI3, monitoring student progress. There's the operational definition of that. And again, that's mostly in Tier 1. In the previous GSAPS, it was emerging. We also rated it as emerging. The team noted a lack of evidence to show specific learning needs of students are being met in Tier 1. Again, that's a snapshot on the day that we were there. The team recommends that learning targets be measurable and the students are given an appropriate amount of time to work. And this will provide opportunities for teachers to assess their progress. CI4 is refining the instructional system. You can see the operational definition. Previously, it was emerging. We also rated it as emerging. The comments were, or one of the comments was, interviews and data provided indicate that there are processes and protocols in place to monitor instructional delivery and lesson plans. However, the procedures for monitoring collaborative planning have recently changed. So we weren't sure how that was going to go yet. And that was the impetus really for rating this one as emerging. That's not necessarily negative. It's just, again, it was just a snapshot on the day of our visit. Some target actions that the team recommends is to examine your current processes. We want to acknowledge that we do know that you have these processes in place, and to just maybe look them over and make sure that your planning meetings include some of these things. And a few of them were taken right from the collaborative planning rubric, high impact practices rubric that we have. So we recommend looking at that. And some of the things that we discussed were SMART goals for each one of the teams, specific SMART goals, identified pre-work from Savannah's curriculum warehouse. And then, of course, over the course of the week, and we know that collaborative planning is kind of spread out during the week, but just to ensure that there are written planning protocols that include opportunities for teachers to be reflective about their practices, to look at the gaps and common misconceptions, to analyze the standard so they can talk about together what students are expected to know, understand, and do, that they have time during the week to utilize the DOE supports, and then to create common expectation for lesson plans. Also in collaborative planning to continue to include the following, and just to examine and make sure that this is in place, that they leave planning by the end of the week with a high quality usable draft of their lesson plans for the following week. And then we said for tested grade levels in particular, ensure the scope and sequence is aligned with Georgia blueprints for GMAS. And then to include daily formative assessments, and that will inform and improve teacher practices, use the data to develop interventions, remediation, and enrichment that's included in Tier 1. And then to have some opportunities for the teachers to actually model and practice maybe some selected elements of the lessons, like if their focus is on the opening of the lesson, that they can actually practice that in front of each other and get their peers' feedback. That is a powerful practice. Some continuations of this target action is to implement monitoring, and then to calibrate with each other, with the people who are doing the monitoring of collaborative planning in particular. And we recommend that you use the DOE's collaborative planning. Again, their high impact practices rubric. And there is a full detailed description in the report of some elements from that rubric to include in your monitoring plan as well. And some of those include calendarizing your attendance at collaborative planning and monitoring the team meetings. Also, our team recommends that we include co-teachers and paraprofessionals in collaborative planning to provide for the needs of students with exceptionalities. We had a couple of people from our Students with Disabilities department at the DOE, and they specifically wanted that in place. And then, of course, to specify the type of co-teaching that is going to take place during lessons. In your Tier 1 instructional framework and strategies, our team recommended that you assess the overall efficacy of Tier 1 in all of the content areas and align the processes to be sure that they're addressing the rigor on a regular basis of the intent and the intent of the Georgia standards. And of course, that you monitor that. Our team recommends as well that you examine your current practices in math to make sure that the new instructional framework is being utilized. At the end of this particular section, there is a list of resources, and these are all actionable links. Are there any questions and comments so far? And we'll take a break at the end of each section, at the end of each system, and let anybody ask questions.
Hey, Lisa, do you mind if I make some highlights really quick?
No, go ahead. Oh, there's Kenneth. Hi, Kenneth.
Yes. Hey.
Kenneth's
So,
our math person. He's our math guru.
Yeah. So first off, thank you all so much for allowing us to be there. It was a really great experience. I wanted to highlight some of the things that Lisa spoke about in the curriculum and instruction piece. I really wanted to highlight sixth grade, if I can, because the model that was set up by sixth grade, you can tell that the teachers planned together. You can tell that it was intentional, and that was a really strong highlight because in the observations that I went to see, you can just tell there was intentionality with the plan set in place and then working with those students across the teachers. It wasn't that as consistent, for other grade levels, but I will say that was an area of highlight for me. Not just the usage of the resources, but just the fact that they were planning together was big. So I'll speak a little bit more at the end to provide some resources because I really think you all are on the way to making some really great gains and to moving from that emerging to operational in some of those areas. So I'll wait until that section to kind of give some support.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenneth.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Hey,
so
thank you. Is
I
anybody else going in and out? That just
okay. Can you
mine.
hear me?
Oh, I
I
think
can hear you. I can hear
Okay.
you, Sharonda.
Okay. Are you guys
Can you hear
here
me?
at the end, correct?
Yeah. Hold on
We
one
can
second.
hear you, Marcus. We can
Oh,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry.
Hello?
Please go forth. Let me let Dr. Scott
No.
go first. Go
It-
first, Dr. Scott.
I don't think Dr. Scott can hear us.
I don't think he can.
Yeah, I'm gonna log out and log back in. Y'all fading in and out. I can't hear you.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
Well, Dr. Scott, like myself, I was traveling from one school coming back downtown in the midst of all of these different visits. So I do apologize for that, trying to be on two meetings at once. And plus, Dr. Scott and I both were trying to join two places at very, very important meetings at one time, district superintendent meeting and then this one. But I do want you to know that we've been listening. Both of us have been listening intently. And I also want to share with members of this team, because other than the first call that we just had with West Chatham, I don't think I've had an opportunity to be on a call with you all. Just again, another exemplar in terms of the feedback that you have provided. One of the goals and expectations of having a voluntary GSAPS, especially the second go around, was to be able to look at the first one, right? Baseline data, and to be able to gauge what level of improvements have we made since the first one. And so certainly your work, your feedback has helped us with that. What we've been saying too, we've had at least, I think, 9 schools that middle and high schools that have been through this process. We included additional ones this year. We do believe in the work of what the state does and supports us with as thought partners, coupled with it informs our work, right? It gives us valuable feedback in terms of when we do our instructional rounds, the feedback that we're providing to schools. And what I will say to you is it has truly been spot on and aligned. That gives us reassurance that we're on the right track as well. And when we do our instructional rounds, we have our principals and their teams, their APs, their academic coaches, their teacher leaders are right there with us. So we're calibrating and debriefing and making sure we certainly lift those highest leverage, bite-sized, actionable feedback that teachers can implement and make those quick shifts. It also affords our learning specialists and other thought partners throughout the district who support our schools to really hone in on what's your value add that you're bringing in to support the schools, to support the teachers on the ground, to coach and actually go in and model. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to be that example. What does it look like? And so I just want to thank you once again. And the other major acts for us was to be able to get on the ground supports for math, ELL, as well as SPED. So again, those are the subgroups, and those are a lot. And I know this is just not here, but across the state, quite frankly, across the nation, that I know a lot of our schools continue to have some challenges with. And so this allows us to be early in terms of all of our actions and truly being able to execute on our plan. So thank you for your support today. It's certainly appreciated.
You're welcome. And again, I hope that the school is taking this as validation that they're on the right path, because a lot of this, our recommendations, we thought just flowed right into seamlessly what is already in place, Marcus, and that these are things that you're already focused on. And so maybe we're helping, we hope, to get you to narrow that down and say, okay, look at this. We know you're doing this. Now look at it and make sure you've got these things in place consistently. So I hope that you feel like this is validation for good things that you're doing, that you're on the right track.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Okay. Do you have any questions on any of this section so far?
Not at this time.
Awesome. Okay.
And since Dr. Scott has joined, I certainly want to commend him as well. They've done a lot of work with culture and climate. They have the Georgia School Counselor of the Year. That has come from a lot of, that's a big deal. From a lot of work they've done around culture and climate at his school. And so there are lots. I wanted to make sure you were back on, Dr. Scott, before I start tooting your horn. So I certainly want to applaud you for also, agreeing to say, hey, we'll do the voluntary. We want to get that feedback so we can look at the things that are going well in areas for continuous improvement. So thank you for your leadership and how you continue to work collaboratively with your team.
Thank you all. Thank y'all. Now y'all say we will get a hard copy of this, right?
Yes, and it will be much more detailed. Yes.
Okay.
You'll get the full report probably this afternoon. I'll be sure and send it to you this afternoon.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, we're going to look at effective leadership next. There are 4 structures under that we look at. And Sharonda mentioned climate and culture. We did look at that and the evidence that we had for that. Cultivating and distributing leadership, ensuring high quality instruction in all classrooms, and then of course driving improvement efforts. In EL1, the climate and culture, there's the operational definition. It was rated as emerging on the previous GSAPS. We also rated it as emerging, knowing that it is still a work in process. However, we do want to acknowledge that it is greatly improved. It seems like for sure from the last GSAPS, and then to move this structure to operational, just continue to ensure the focus is on high level of learning for all students. And we took that straight from the operational definition there. In EL2, cultivating and distributing leadership, you can see the operational definition. The previous GSAPS rated it as emerging. We rated it as operational. And we do want to commend Marcus and his school staff on the efforts that they have in place for distributive leadership opportunities and on rotating the facilitation of the leadership team meetings. Just continue to assess and review the systems and processes in place for the leadership team, just to support high levels of learning for all students. On EL3, ensuring high quality instruction in all classrooms, you can see the operational definition. The previous rating was emerging, and we rated it as emerging. You can see our comments there. We do commend the leadership on the amount of time that you spend in classrooms. Our observations and your content mastery scores do indicate maybe a need for a renewed sense of urgency to focus instructional time on content mastery, not on processes, front loading, and or remediation. To move this structure to operational, take the focus walks that you do, take them beyond compliance and include checks for measurable learning targets, rigorous tasks that are aligned to the standards, and differentiation for special ed students. On EL5, driving your improvement efforts, it was previously rated as emerging. We also rated it as emerging. And really there, if you look at the operational definition, if you look at the last part of that sentence, to effectively, that those processes are in place to positively impact student outcomes. And that was one of the sticking points on that. As you can see in the comments, it says data shows that there's a disconnect between student achievement and the systems and structures and processes that the school has in place. And we encourage the school just to continue to examine your student data to drive your instructional practices to positively impact those student outcomes. And so that last little part is why we still rated it as emerging, although we do want to acknowledge there are a lot of efforts in place and that this has continued to improve, that this is a focus of the school. And there are some resources, again, at the end of this section that we have included. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this section?
Lisa, I'm going to drop in that for your focus walks that you highlighted them on.
Yes.
I'm going to drop in the instructional framework that you all can use during your focus walks to highlight different areas for improvement. So the amount of time that teachers should be spending on certain things, it's beneficial for the teacher to kind of be reflective, but also, like Lisa was saying, during those focus walks, it'll give you a guide, you and your leadership team, to figure out what should be the goal here. And then the second link will be on effective mathematics teaching practices and the mathematical practices. It gives you an idea of what the students should be doing and what the teacher should be, or what the teacher should be doing and what the students should be doing in response to that. That way, it'll give you another vantage point, another viewpoint, other than just, do they have these things on the board? So I'll place both of those in the chat.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Mm-hmm.
there any questions or comments from anyone else before I move on?
Just the comment, just one clarification. When you said discrepancies with the student outcomes, are you just talking about content mastery?
I believe that's probably the case, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, professional capacity is the next system, and that involves these 4 structures of attracting, developing, retaining your staff, and then, of course, ensuring staff collaboration. There is the operational definition. The previous GSAPS rated this structure as emerging. We rated it as operational. And then developing staff, you can see the operational definition there. The previous GSAPS rated it as emerging. We did as well. The comments in this section, some of them are to examine current efforts in place for professional learning. An individualized PL should be added to address content and evidence-based instructional strategies. Retaining staff, you can see the operational definition. The previous GSAPS rated it as emerging. We rated it as operational. And PC4, ensuring the staff collaboration. Again, there's the definition. The previous GSAPS was rated as emerging. We did as well. And pretty much the only comment there is to look at the comments and target actions in under coherent instruction related to collaborative planning, just to boost that up to improve the quality of instruction. And a way to do that, a target action here, is for the coaching cycle to formalize what goes on with coaching cycles by developing a written process that would include information on tiered supports for teachers, what specific things happen at each tier, how the teachers would be able to flow between the tiers in support, make sure that they understand that, and then, of course, to relate their professional development to the specific interventions in the tiers and how you're going to collect data on those tiers, just for transparency's sake, just to formalize that process by putting it in writing. And there are some resources there, additional resources should you happen to need any for professional capacity. And we'll stop here for any questions or comments. Kenneth, do you want to speak to anything on math in this part?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've also placed in some links for professional development that may be beneficial for the school.
Okay.
The virtual specialist program is there. It is a 3-series or a 3-day program. There's the first one on November 15th. The next one is February 7th, and the last one is March 27th. It'll really give your teacher some support with identifying how to look at these learning plans, how to look at these resources, how to make that transition from that emerging to operational. Like Lisa was saying, you guys are super close in that area, and I think this program will help you all push to the next step. And then the community, the Georgia DOE community, is a perfect opportunity to plan and talk with other teachers outside of the building, all over the state of Georgia, to kind of get some ideas. So that's where I'll add that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenneth.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We will move on then to supportive learning environment. And there are only 2 structures here. The first one is on climate and culture, and the second one is on a multi-tiered system of supports. On the one on climate and culture, there's the operational definition for that. Previous rating on GSAPS for this was operational. We also rated it as operational. However, we did take note that about half of the students did not rate that they've always felt safe at school. So maybe that's something to look at. 37% do always feel safe, but about half of them did not. And then, of course, continue to mitigate negative community influence within the school to examine and implement ways to improve the safety and order. But overall, we thought that the efforts going on at the school, we wanted to say yes, of course, it's operational. And SLE 2, the multi-tiered system of supports for students. There's the operational definition. Previously, the GSAPS rated it as emerging. We did as well. And the only reason we did is because interviews seem to indicate that this process is in the beginning stages of development. So we couldn't quite rate it as operational, but we do know that you have this in place and are starting to put in some things, some supports for your students. So our target action is related to that, obviously, to align the processes that you're putting into place with the Georgia tiered system of supports and implementing their step-by-step guide and your district fidelity of implementation rubric. We also have a recommendation that you make sure that the data pertaining specifically to subgroups and individual students, such as EL and students with disabilities, that their data is examined and utilized to meet the needs of the whole child. We also recommend that a formal written process for this multi-level system for instruction and prevention, that the tiered system includes all of these things. Examining your tier 1 strategies and interventions always comes first, that you include secondary and tertiary levels of intervention. That would be tier 2 and tier 3. Examine the processes for putting students their tiered supports in place, and then ensuring their interventions are all evidence-based and implemented with fidelity. And then there are the resources as far as that goes. Are there any questions or comments on this particular section? No? We will move on. Family and community engagement. There are 4 areas that we look at in a GSAPS there, and you can see what those are. Here are the operational definitions for all 4 of those. 1 revolves around the welcoming environment that is in place for families and communities. 2 is the communication back and forth. 5 is a partnership with the families and community members, businesses, civic organizations, those kind of things. And then 6 is collaborating, usually specifically with community members, businesses, churches, civic organizations to support your students. Previously, 1 was operational on the previous GSAPS. We also said it was operational. The previous rating for 2 was emerging, but we think it's operational. School is doing an excellent job communicating with its parents and the community. On 5, it was previously rated as emerging. We believe it to be operational. That's including those parents and family members and community organizations, including them in decision making. We felt like that was operational. And then on 6, that was operational in the previous GSAPS, and we still felt like that was operational in this one. Some of the comments we made were, of course, the school provides a welcoming environment. You make numerous efforts to communicate. We commend the principal on meeting with school council more than is required. And that you are building the PTSA organization and furthering those relationships with your local businesses to collaborate with them to support your students. And should you have need, the DOE has an excellent family and community engagement resource, and I put a link to it there. And if you have further need, the local RESA, I know, has a wraparound specialist and has some services available that you can take advantage of. Okay, that's pretty much the summary report. I'll stop sharing that document. Does anybody have any closing comments or questions?
I just want to say thanks for the feedback. I think it's excellent feedback. And like Ms. Morrell said, I think a lot of it is spot on. So we'll definitely look forward to getting into it. And hopefully we can have this same review next year so we can see our improvement.
Well, I hope you did see, and that was why I put in the previous GSAPS, that there's a great deal to celebrate as far as
Definitely.
improvement goes for Marcus, for you, and for your faculty and staff. So they're from pre-pandemic to now, and throw that pandemic in there, that there's been progress made. So I commend you in particular on that.
And I also would like to just commend Dr. Scott on the work that he's doing. And as I listen to the feedback and the growth from pre-pandemic to now, certainly Dr. Scott and his team has been really intentional around many of those things. And then also those areas where it was noted as emerging. I know that Dr. Scott is very intentional in already addressing many of those things and putting in those structures and systems in place to ensure that those things can be done. So I'm excited to see the work ahead. And I know that Dr. Scott and his team will take this feedback. And so great job, Dr. Scott. And it just really affirms some of the conversations that we've had about the things that you're already doing to set those things in motion. So just wanted to make sure I share that with you, Dr. Scott, and with the rest of the team.
Thank you.
Yes. And Dr. Scott, if you need any assistance, any support, just, send us, we're just an email away to provide that support as you navigate some of the documents. But yeah, we look forward to working with you.
All right. Thank you.
Well, listen.
Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you all so much, Lisa and Kenneth. You guys have shared numerous hours with us today, Savannah Chatham. So thank you so much. We hope that this thought partnership continues. We certainly will be using those resources, maximizing those. I want to say thank you to Ms. Santiago, who has joined. She's one of our learning specialists for literacy. With ELA, she works with all of our middle and high schools as well. And so even team members that are not here, they will receive the report as well as the recording, so that they can just continue this great work and what we're doing collaboratively. But again, it is leaders like Dr. Scott who are very reflective and again, who welcomed the feedback. And so that only makes us stronger. And I just want to again say to you, Dr. Scott, thank you. I think another value add of all of this is to see your growth, right? The affirmation that, hey, we're on the right track. We are getting the gains. Most importantly, because you have an exemplar data team room, and for you to go back and with your school leadership team and share this with them, for them to see, hey, look all this hard work we've been doing. We're getting the gains. It's a lot to celebrate. You guys do a lot of celebration over there. So this is another reason to celebrate, okay? So I just want to lift
It
that
is.
today. Yeah, for sure. And just thank you all for coming alongside of us and working collaboratively. Kudos
Yes,
to you
ma'am.
all.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a great rest of your
Thank you.
day.
I
Thank you
enjoyed
much.
my visit in Savannah, by the way. So if y'all want this again next year, I'm in.
I
Oh yeah, we'll
definitely
put you
do.
at the top of the list. You're not.
Yeah.
There
Look,
you go.
we'll be in contact here shortly, even before next year, for all of those great
Awesome.
resources. Please
All
come
right.
back.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I'll be glad to. I think Kenneth enjoyed it as well. And I will go
I
ahead and
sure
speak for
did.
the rest of the team. We thoroughly enjoyed our visit. We did.
Yes.
Thank you. We appreciate your support,
Mhm.
and we're thankful to have you.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Y'all have a great
Thank you.
rest of your
Have
day.
a good one.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.
Dr. Scott, can you stay on for just a second? I just want to ask, have you already stopped the recording? I'm going to stay on for just a second with him ask a question. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. I want to ask you about, I don't know if she may be still recording, but it's okay. I wanted to ask you about the,
Well, let's get off because I want to show the recording to my staff. So
okay, I'm sorry, but let me, okay.
I can just send you a link, or you want to just